Good afternoon. Hello, welcome, bienvenidos. I am Costanza Shubacanilla. I am the Anti-Disinformation Strategy Lead at the Wikimedia Foundation. It really is such a pleasure to be here with all of you in Mexico City. It's my first time, so I'm very excited. I really want to start by thanking all of the organizers for organizing such a timely event. I think there really was never a better time to be creating a community around maintaining accurate and trustworthy information, and so it really will need each one of you to achieve this goal. Given that I am speaking kind of among the first here, I thought to do a little bit of level setting, especially that I know there are different people, different levels and different expertises and different perspectives in the room. Some people who might have been Wikimedians for a long time, some people who are librarians but might have not engaged with Wikimedia as well or as much. And so I'm gonna divide the presentation into three main parts. Sorry, I have two computers, so one is a little bit of an introduction on understanding information integrity. I really appreciated some of the speakers this morning making this point of moving from only discussing disinformation as a way, as a threat, something that we need to respond to, and going instead into discussing information integrity more in general, like what is that we want to achieve, how does a healthy information ecosystem look like in general, right? And why do we think, what is the role of Wikimedians in it? What is the role of, more generally, community-led models, open source models, etc.? And then we are gonna be talking a little bit about the Wikimedia model, like why it works so well. Sorry, I'm gonna slow down because I feel like I might be talking too fast. Why is the Wikimedia model working? And then at the last part, I will discuss just some of the ways in which we can work towards trustworthy information and what both the foundation has been doing, what we've been doing from a multi-stakeholder perspective with governments and others. One thing that I will say before I start, you might have noticed in my title, there's a strong focus on the communities. So a little spoiler on where this whole presentation is going is really that the communities are a key point of both how disinformation spreads and also how trustworthy information spreads. And so I'll try to make that connection there. Now, I think really this conference is really great in that it brings together Wikimedians and librarians and Wikimedians who are librarians and vice versa, who are people who have Wikimedians on one side have, of course, the goal to ensure that everyone who wishes to participate in the sum of knowledge can do so. And of course, librarians have the professional expertise of knowing how to share accurate information to wide audiences. So I think these two things really work incredibly well. So I think with this, maybe let's jump in the information integrity perspective, and how do we create a positive vision? So in other words, how do we create an ecosystem in which trustworthy information can thrive rather than playing catch up and whack-a-mole and trying to just catch the bad information? I'll start from the definition of information integrity. This is something that has been discussed more and more in international groups, especially the UN and different governments. It really has changed a lot from a couple of years ago, in which the focus was really on disinformation, and moved a little bit more on this perspective. This has been especially a UN shift, but again, also governments have done this shift. Maybe I should also say, in my role at the foundation, my work is also to coordinate very closely with governments, with the UN, with international groups, to try and develop policies that are helpful for our model, and that protect our model and make sure that it advances. So this is a shift that we have seen. It is something that I think it's very useful. And so the focus is really on the accuracy, consistency, and reliability of information, and then that is threatened by disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech. The design here that you see, the graph that you see here, is the one that UN put out on the global principles for information integrity. As you can see, there are different things they focused on: societal trust and resilience, healthy incentives, public empowerment. We don't need necessarily to follow the same scheme, but I think it is useful to give an initial start. So why is the information environment in such a crisis? Hasn't disinformation always existed? Yes, but the information ecosystem has taken a lot more information compared to previous years, due to different reasons, not only the technological reason, which would be the most obvious. And so we try to think in a holistic way in terms of the information ecosystem at large. So not just what happens in the Wikimedia world, not just what Wikimedia is doing, but what is the information ecosystem at large? What is happening in that environment? And how does Wikimedia work in that environment? And so on that perspective, there are kind of three different vectors for analysis. One is the technological one. So how are our platforms shaped? How do users can interact with each other, can interact with the information on the platform, can receive information, can see what sources of information have brought to a particular piece of content that they can see. But this is not the only vector for analysis. So a technological solution alone is not enough to solve the issue. There's also a social component, and that relates a little bit to the point on communities that I was making before, and I'll make later. And then, of course, there is a political perspective. And so there is a geopolitical incentive to spread false and misleading information. It has been used as a hybrid way of conflict. And so this is something that we have seen in the past few years. So it's not a new problem. But it does happen in a new configuration of infrastructure and a social political environment. There are differences. One difference is scale. Of course, there's a much larger amount of information and much larger ease of sharing this information. And speed is also a big difference. And speed is one of the things that actually make our model work better, because information on Wikipedia it's not the fastest model, right? So information does not travel as fast, and it takes a long time to create that information that makes it possible to make it more trustworthy. there are incentives to make this confused, and so, of course, we need clarity and a framework. And again, it's not going to be a tech, political, or media solution, but it's going to need to be a combination. These are definition. I think most of you are familiar with the definition by now, so I'm not gonna, but I always like to put them there, and then you can look at the slides after. So what is the impact then of disinformation? Of course, the biggest impact is on the public sphere, so and on losing that ability to talk to each other, which of course is also a core of democracy, a core need for democracies. And so it has consequences on democratic processes, on human rights, on public health, on public trust, and more. These are just some examples. Disinformation about conflicts or elections can lead to an immediate risk of physical harm. Political disinformation can bring to harassment and risk of immediate harms for activists. It can have consequences for human rights. Scientific and medical disinformation, of course, as we have seen, can spread diseases, can create denials of serious illnesses, and so on and so forth. So one of the reasons why I had this focus on communities, I've done some research in the past on disinformation communities. This is not in the context of the Wikimedia world. And what we had found, I studied in particular anti-vax communities and then QAnon propaganda. And I have to say, we haven't started studying communities, but we ended up on the communities because really a piece of information, of disinformation will not travel if there isn't a community that is primed also to support that and to spread. Like something that a lot of people don't realize is disinformation, most disinformation campaigns fail. Most disinformation campaigns are actually not successful. The ones that are successful usually are the ones that are able to kind of use some techniques and get into some of the communities. Then on the other hand, we have a community like the Wikimedia community in which it really is the core of why the model works and why the model is able to spread trustworthy information instead. So, and what we have seen is that one of the reasons or when this is done better, when this works better, is when the communities are wider, are more diverse, are more widespread in different countries, etc. So we've seen that in the communities in which disinformation spreading is larger, they're already primed for that. In some cases, there's a lot of top-down influencers who spread disinformation from top-down. And that is one of the reasons why it works so well. And on the other hand, the communities that spread trustworthy information instead have a more horizontal, and it works at its best when it has more people. So that was just, to level set a little bit. And now on Wikimedia particularly and information integrity. So why does the system work? I use this picture because actually an academic I was talking to was like, every time I try to explain the model, this is what I look like. So I really can relate to that. Why does it work? It works for a number of reasons. It is, first of all, because it's collaboratively edited by volunteers. It assumes good intention. This is not something that you have on social media or other media environment. The nonprofit public interest encyclopedia aspect is really, really important because the prime objective of Wikipedia is really to provide free access. And so this is how it became a stepping stone into shared truth online. For example, we know that English Wikipedia, which is the largest Wikipedia, averages 10.8 billion page views a month. Globally, all language Wikipedia receive visits from 1.6 unique devices a month. So that's one device for every 5 people on the planet. And the goal is really to be encyclopedic, so the content integrity is the goal. The fact that it's a nonprofit and the only nonprofit among the first, consistently among the first 10 most visited websites in the world, is that the consequence is that there's no advertising, there's no tracking of people or sales of data, there's no optimization for engagement. And this is really important for a number of reasons. For example, the tracking of people, of course, it is important for everybody because privacy is a human right, but it also means that minorities or people who have, who might be harassed or persecuted for sharing their point of view are more able to engage with Wikipedia compared to other online spaces. And so this is really, not only is important because of the human rights component, but it's also something that really makes the model work and makes the model unique. And so, for example, this is one of the points that when we talk to governments and we talk to policymakers, we try to make them understand why privacy protection is not just a nice to have or something that it's right and then you should do it for that, but also really creates a benefit for everybody because it creates more trustworthy information. Of course, the verifiability, reliability, and neutrality policies are really at the core of the community policies, and that's why, again, compared to other communities, it works in this way. One thing that I think is it's already important, but it's gonna gain even more importance is the focus on sources. And this, especially in a world in which AI is gonna be more developed, having this focus on what sources, where the information comes, how do we track it, it's probably going to be really, really important. And so I think this is also something that puts together both librarians and Wikimedians and really the importance that we all give to sources. Another thing that I haven't put here, but that I want to mention is there's also on the Wikimedia models, there are ways to limit the influence of editors who violate policies. There are sanctions for policies for people who violate policies. This can be bans on specific topics or site-wide bans, and so this really curbs also the disinformation spreading. On the sources, I'm going to leave some resources at the end, but I want to mention that Wikipedians also have developed tools like Citation Hunt or Sight Unseen to encourage people to find citation. And there is also a Wiki project reliability task force dedicated to improving article reliabilities. So really, I think, in addition to, of course, reliable sources and perennial sources, lists there are in all languages, I think it will be really important moving forward. Now, the interesting thing about the Wikipedia and Wikimedia data is that it's not just what you see on the website. So it's not only for people who interact with the actual content, but everybody interacts with the content one way or another. Wikipedia and Wikidata are extensively used to fight disinformation as trained fact-checking systems. It has been used by all large companies to provide contextual information about their content. And even though of course, fact-checking on in big tech companies. We'll see where that goes. But they have been using Wikipedia to train their systems. They've been using Wikipedia to train LLMs. And of course, they're used by search engines and digital assistants and all of that. So this is to say that Wikipedia also has a impact on the rest of the information ecosystem. It's not just what you see on the platform, but how it travels outside of the platform. So now, how do we think about improving the information integrity, and how do we think about moving forward with this and continuing what already is on the website? So from the perspective of the Wikimedia Foundation, we worked on a 6-point kind of anti-disinformation strategy. It is developed into different pillars. The first pillar is to build. So to partnership with the communities to increase their understanding of disinformation, but also to increase our understanding of how communities work against disinformation. One of the things that we did with that, and I'll link to that later, is we created anti-disinformation repository that puts together all of the projects and that communities have done to combat disinformation. This ranges from some of the projects I mentioned before on citations. It can include also some dedicated trainings. It includes also, there are also some projects that have been done together with libraries in different countries. And the reason to do this was to also not only spread the information, make sure that people know what is going on, but also to connect communities with each other and maybe scale some of those projects and maybe recreate some of those projects in other languages and so on and so forth. Another component is to, again, work with the communities to foster the understanding of specific disinformation challenges. So this looks like dedicated trainings. It looks like sometimes there are dedicated task forces on specific topics in which we try to work together with the communities to understand what they're seeing and how to increase capacity. It also includes creating dedicated tools and training on the tools. And this is part also of the next one on Empower, which is, again, to empower the communities with some dedicated tools. One thing that is interesting about the communities is that they not only create their own policies, but they can also create their own tools. So there really is this back and forth. And then, we find other partners, we advocate with policymakers, I was saying before, and then really try to protect the movement and the model. One thing that I wanted to mention, especially as I've seen this morning that there was a discussion on the how do we work with policymakers as well, like what should policies look like. One example that I wanted to make of our work and how we have worked with policymakers in the past. So the Wikimedia Foundation has co-chaired a task force of the Freedom Online Coalition, which is a coalition of states who work for Freedom Online. On information integrity. And the byproduct of this was a document that was co-created again by the foundation, but also the governments of Denmark and the Netherlands, and approved by all the other governments that are part of this coalition on precisely this positive vision of like, what do we do for information integrity? What do we do to create a healthier information ecosystem? And this was articulated in 3 parts. that are agency, trust, and inclusion. I'm not going to go super into the specifics of this, but I thought they were a good response also to some of the questions that we already have been raising. So the idea behind this, and what we're trying to, advocate for, is that everyone everywhere should be able to participate freely and safely in the creation, consumption, dissemination, and evaluation of information and ideas. To do so, we need a human rights-based and human-centric approach to digital technologies, which means individuals should be front and center. So what does that mean? Individuals and communities should be able to participate freely and safely in the creation and dissemination of information and ideas. To do so, they need to be empowered, which means they need to be the first part on agency is about empowering people to understand the digital environment in which they are, sometimes make decisions, for example, on algorithmic amplification. So it is about asking the companies or to have the governments to create an environment in which that it looks a little bit more like a community-led model in which users really have the ability to decide what they see. And also goes into literacy, into protecting the privacy of users, so having their data not sold out, the safety of the users, as we said before, so the fact that people that come from all walks of life can add information without having, without fear of retribution, and transparency on how the model works. Trust is about having the trust of the individual, both with each other, but also with the platforms and also with the system. This has been eroded in the past few years. So how do we improve that? And that goes into the direction of the reliability of sources and traceability of sources that we said before, and transparency and accountability. And then finally, inclusion. Inclusion is not only, we've seen that the spaces that work best and the places that work best are those that have the most linguistic and cultural diversity. So it is about making sure that, for example, there's universal, meaningful connectivity for everybody, that people can really access online spaces and bring their cultural diversity and linguistic diversity, promoting diverse and global voices, and protecting against non-discrimination and harassment. And so all of this to say, the call to action, I guess, would be to use these days to really think about what we all bring, what the different parts of our work, how they can interact together, how do we engage not only with online but also offline communities as well. How do we protect and ask to protect, in case of policymakers, community-led models like Wikipedia? We also want to always stress how Wikipedia is a digital public good, meaning it is, digital public goods are something that has been discussed a lot in policy environments, especially UN and from democratic countries. And so what is a digital public good? How does it work, and why should we protect it? Keep pushing for open knowledge. Open knowledge, of course, is very much connected with this idea of digital public goods. So just as, physical public goods, things that are for everyone and should be protected for this reason. And two of the things that I said before, well, actually one thing, because the other one I did not say, is to really focus on those sources. Another thing is we have seen that a lot of this information comes out in data voids. So when there are topics that aren't as discussed or don't have the same level of analysis. And so filling the data voids is really a useful way to ensure that this, that there's less disinformation. So just to conclude this quick, or maybe not quick. It felt quick for me, but probably not for you. The Wikimedia model is unique. It works under collaboratively built trust, but it shouldn't be about the Wikimedia model alone, but about how this model can be scalable, replicable, how it populates more internet spaces. We want an internet that looks like more like community-led models, right? We don't want a special carve-out thing for ourselves, but we really want everybody, the multi-stakeholder, environment to create a place in which more spaces like Wikipedia exist. This part of communities, I'd like to, discuss with some of you in the next days how you see it from your perspective. But really, to me, is interesting how it really is an infrastructure of this information at the same time the solution to creating trustworthy information. The way platforms are. I've said it's not just about the platforms, but the way the platforms are designed really is key. For example, what I was saying about speed, that Wikipedia doesn't have that same level of having to push information so fast. There is a lot of friction on Wikipedia in the sense that it's difficult to edit. It's there's work to be done in the community to make sure that your content is out. So those are also the examples that we should take and try to scale. And then really non-commercial and community models like Wikipedia are essential and can be also a tool for journalists and for others who work on trustworthy information. I'll close it here. And then I'd like to open it for questions as well. This is a list of resources. I'm just gonna leave it here. Some of the things that I have talked about and some other things that can be interesting for anyone. I wonder if there are any questions. Comments? I see a hand. Hi.
Logistical question, but you mentioned, This is a logistical question, but you mentioned that people could access your slides and then also these resources. That is in the Etherpad for this session, which people can find from the conference website. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, because I saw people taking photos, but if you actually want to find the links, just go to the Etherpad for this section, which you'll find from the program.
Yes, I see.
Thank you. I have a question. It's really huge. I'm curious how you would define communities.
Yes.
I've recently participated in a Royal Society workshop on disinformation, and they were focusing specifically on community-led initiatives. And I'm wondering, as opposed to what, and also how do you define communities? It's such a broad term.
Yeah. This is absolutely a huge question. It's also one of the reasons why probably I can make this comparison, because maybe I'm not talking about the same things. Talking about these communities, I would say, just back of the napkin definition could be just of people who regularly talk to each other, either online or in person. But I do totally take your point that the term is very loosely defined, and so this is part of the issue. Because even, for example, in the communities that I was talking about, the QAnon and the anti-vax, those were a completely different environment in which the QAnon communities, I studied them particularly in Italy, so they were very small, were really communities, meaning people who really interacted with each other frequently, who exchanged ideas, who had, relationships outside of that particular thing. The anti-vax communities were very, very large. And so they were much more loosely defined in the sense that not everybody knew each other, so it was just people who overlapped, maybe, in a way. I think online communities are particularly difficult to define compared to, physical communities where it is a little more obvious. It is also one of the, not to go too far, but it is also one of the issues why we have seen some studies have found that some of the issues why we found a rise in polarization, it is specifically because of online communities not having those same constraints as physical communities, and us spending much more time online has created kind of a different type of social dynamic, in the sense that, if you want to exit an online community, usually it doesn't come with any repercussion, and it's not a big, emotional thing. But for physical communities is different, and it's also easier to be part of more communities. You can have. So anyway, I'm going too far with this, but yes, I take your point. It's very difficult to define. Should be probably one of the things we try to do.
Hello, I will try to speak in English. I'm Marcos from Brazil.